It's important we look at the facts. Why? Why?
Douglas Ross is sounding pretty scared.
I believe in independence.
And he clapped like a seal.
Hi again, welcome to another Planet Holyrood. I'm Paul Hutcheon, political editor of the Daily Record. Joining me to chew over the best stories of the week are Hannah Rodger, chief reporter of the Sunday Mail, and also Douglas Dickie of the Scottish Daily Express. So the number one story in town remains the number one story in town, and that is the police investigation into SNP finances. It's not been quite as frenetic as it's been in previous weeks, but there's still enough to discuss and chew over. I think that there's probably two stories I want to look at. Hannah, the first one was the Sunday Mail exclusive about police investigating an Amazon account that may or may not be linked to the SNP. Do you just want to talk us through that and why it's significant?
Well, I mean, it's a pretty simple story in the sense that, you know, what you've just said, the police are examining, you know, an Amazon account which purchases from which may have been made using SNP funds, and we know that, you know, the SNP funds are part of the fraud probe. I think it's, you know, the volume of purchases or the volume of transactions is where I suppose that makes it interesting. So I think there's around 1,000 different transactions that are being examined by the police as part of this. So, you know, it just kind of builds this picture of the investigation, of the types of things that the police are looking at. But as you say, things have kind of calmed down somewhat recently. I think just people are, you know, the information is sort of dripping out here and there, but it's not that sort of big sensational thing that it was when obviously Peter Morell was arrested right at the beginning.
I suppose, Hannah, you look at all these stories that the Sunday Mail have been doing. I guess one of the takeaways is the police are taking this very seriously indeed, aren't they?
Well, yeah. I mean, they would have to. You know,
so this is not some sort of cursory tick box exercise. You know, in terms of the detail that's come out in the Sunday Mail, you know, this is quite a thorough forensic investigation. And although it's kind of, as you say, it's not as busy in the newspapers this week. I mean, you know, who knows where this goes? I mean, nothing would surprise me at all with this.
Yeah, I mean, that is the thing that we're seeing. You know, it is. The police have had how long? 2 years now that they've been looking at this. So you would expect it to be a very in-depth investigation, because otherwise, what have they been doing? But, you know, from the information that we've reported in the Sunday Mail specifically, and, you know, I have to give most of the credit for that actually to our political editor, John Ferguson. He's been, you know, on fire with this stuff. The types of things they're looking at, it does give that sense that it is a very kind of logical, forensic look at exactly what has been bought and what those funds have been used for, who's been buying them, what is the purpose of various purchases. You know, and of course we don't know the reasons for those things, but hopefully that will become clear at some point in future. But certainly, yeah, we can say that the police are doing a very kind of thorough job on this, and I don't think they're finished yet.
So, Dougie, the second story I want to look at, it was in the papers earlier this week. If you go back to the raids on the home of Nicola Sturgeon, Peter Murrow, and also in relation to the SNP headquarters in Edinburgh, it was reported that the Crown Office were made aware of the request for a warrant on March 20th, but it was only April 3rd that it was greenlit and sent to a sheriff. So there was quite a sizable gap between those two dates, and some folk are asking whether it was related to the SNP leadership contest. We've got to be careful just talking about this, have to be quite cautious, but what's your view on this story?
Yeah, it's a bit of a bizarre one. It seems that it's obviously sat in someone's entry for a few days. So the theory, certainly the theory throughout the SNP leadership contest was that, Humza Yousaf presented himself as the continuity candidate, and thus he was intrinsically linked with, Peter Murrell, or Peter Murrell's time as chief executive. And the argument goes from some that had Peter Murrell been arrested before the end of the leadership contest, then it might have an impact on the result. The suggestion, again, from some seems to be that maybe the Crown Office wanted to avoid the political implications of arresting him before the end of it. Now, again, I don't think anyone, the opposition, are kind of questioning that, and at the same time, by arresting him before the end of it, of course, it could also have equally as massive political implications. But it's kind of opened up a debate about the position of the Lord Advocate. Obviously, she sits as and again, there's no suggestion of any wrongdoing or anything, but she sits as a government minister, and I think a few people now would like to see that situation changed. I doubt very much Dorothy Bain would be in any mood to do favours for Nicola Sturgeon after being hung out to dry in the Supreme Court case back in 2022. But certainly among them, Kenny McCaskill, a former Justice Minister, himself said there should be that separation of the prosecution service and the government, because regardless of kind of facts of it, the optics aren't great. And I think I come back to this every week. It's the optics of the situation that the suggestion that they waited 2 weeks, it allowed the SNP leadership contest to come to a close, and then all of a sudden this raid takes place. And I think it is going to open up a debate about the position of the Lord Advocate within the Scottish Cabinet.
I think though, as well, like, as you're saying, it's not, I don't think anyone is suggesting that there was a conscious, like, a conspiracy, because this bloody situation is full of, like, conspiracy theories, but it just should never be allowed to be questioned. Like, we shouldn't have the head of, senior judicial figures also sitting within government, and if they did separate those out, it would just remove the issue altogether. Do you know what I mean? People wouldn't be able to have these sort of crazy theories because it just wouldn't be the case.
Also, I think, as you say, it's got this dual role. You could quite easily separate those out, couldn't you? I mean,
exactly. Why is it not separate? But I think one interesting thing about this is this might be me. This is just my opinion, right? But I think the situation with the warrant and things, it's kind of thrown up a bit of a question about the relationship between the police and the Crown, and I'm kind of getting the sense that perhaps the police are not entirely thrilled with the Crown in terms of the way that this is going down. And also, I think we can ask, like, why the hell did it take so long for a warrant to be issued? I mean, it's not unheard of for sheriffs to be woken up in the middle of the night because the cops have to go and burst somebody's door. So, and that's not specific to this case. It's just in general. I mean, I'm not an expert. I don't know how long it takes for warrants to be issued, but 2 weeks to me seems a bit unusual.
Just one final thing before we move on to the ferries. I was a bit surprised that Police Scotland released that information, the dates under FOI. I mean, they're usually so tight with anything that relates to a police investigation, even number of cops in an investigation, how much does it cost? They always give a reason for why they can't release it. Yet they released, which was quite.
Well, that in itself, that's what I'm saying about this relationship, or maybe how they feel about it. In terms of the Crown. But again, that shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't matter. You should be able to request something and they release it, because that's just how it should work. But obviously we know that it doesn't always work like that. So
yeah.
Dougie,
ferries, Neil Gray, Cabinet Secretary, stood up, gave an update statement on this depressing ferries fiasco. And I suppose the top line, just to recap, we should have had 2 new CalMac ferries. We haven't, due to delays and cost overruns and disputes and whatnot. And he basically admitted that the second ferry, it would be cheaper to start again than just push ahead with completion of the existing ferry. But they're just going to push ahead anyway because it would result in too long of a delay. I mean, how bad is this? I mean, it seems like an absolute catastrophe.
It's absolutely dreadful. To be honest, it should be enough to bring, you know, government ministers down, or should have been in the past. But in some ways, it's so typical of the SNP to kind of circle the wagons on it and try and deflect attention from it and deflect blame. It just looks awful. It's an absolute scandal. There needs to be some sort of inquiry into this to find out how this has happened, how these decisions were made, who made the decisions. And of course, the people who suffer are you know, those island and coastal communities who've to deal with delay after delay, breakdown after breakdown. And of course, it's not great for, you know, the workers at Ferguson's. This isn't their fault, and yet they're getting dragged through the papers every week. I noticed that Jim McCall's offered to take it back for £1 if the Scottish Government is willing to put up the cash.
Yeah, small print on that, I think
you would need to. Aye, absolutely. So I mean, it's one of these things where Neil Gray I think he's made the right call. In some ways, it's not Neil Gray's fault. I mean, it's not Neil Gray's fault. He's relatively new in the role. I think it's correct that they carry on with it, because another delay would be a complete disaster. But you know, once this is over, there's so many questions to answer right now. I mean, we've had, I think it's 6 transport ministers during this time, and it's just I was taken by I was listening to GMS yesterday, and Jamie Halcrow-Johnson, I liked his line. They were discussing Blackadder, and he said when it came to the ferries, there's too many baldricks and not enough cunning plans. And I think that pretty much sums it up.
It's probably one of the most depressing procurement exercises in the history of Scotland. I mean, like, giving it to Fergus Marine in the first place, and then the decision to bring it into public control. There's been almost nothing good about this at all from day one, has there?
No, nothing.
What do you make of this idea that, you know, the government saved jobs? That's what they always seem to kind of hide behind.
I mean, yes, they've saved jobs, but I mean, it's a kind of hard comparison to make, isn't it, with that? But it's also, they've saved jobs to do this one specific task that is not being done. But the problem is, you know, when I've been writing about the ferries stuff in the Sunday Mail, whenever I speak to people, the kind of constant thing is, okay, you know, when this contract, whenever it is finished, like, we don't have other work. I mean, they have to rely on the UK government contracts, like the MOD, stuff for the MOD, BAE Systems, who else? Lockheed Martin, I want to say. You know, they're reliant on contracts from out with the Scottish government to keep them going just now, but that's not sustainable. And the guys who are working, well, guys and girls who are working there just now, a lot of them are kind of slightly older, and they'll be, you know, probably going into retirement in the not too distant future. And there is a real concern about, you know, if we want to actually have a shipbuilding industry in Scotland, then you need to have more young people coming through, and they're not going to be able to learn those skills if there's not the contracts there to keep the place open and to keep the work going. So it's more than just saving a few jobs. It's actually saving those jobs, yes, but building up the industry again, and having a contract that's just a national embarrassment. I mean, it really is. Like, it's ridiculous, this situation with the ferries. Having that is not actually going to, it's not going to inspire younger people to want to go and work in that industry. It's not making the people who are there just now, it's not making them proud to go to their work every day when, as Dougie was saying quite rightly, they're being trashed every other week in the papers, and it's not their fault. But also, yes, okay, this isn't Neil Gray's fault as such, but I'm going to say, actually, yeah, it is his fault, because he's part of the government whose fault it is. And I think we need to put our foot down somewhere and say, actually, no, I'm holding you responsible for this. You're in charge of it now, so you're responsible. Because otherwise, people just keep getting away with it. I mean, who has actually taken responsibility for this? Derek Mackay.
That's the point. I mean, who is accountable for this?
Well, exactly.
It seems to be past the parcel, doesn't it, Dougie?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so bad. It's so bad. And as Hannah was saying, to kind of continue on that point, who's going to want to come into shipbuilding in Scotland? But I mean, who's going to want to take out a contract with Ferguson, or indeed anyone on the Clyde? It's just so bad, and it's getting kicked down the can. They tried to pin the blame on obviously Derek Mackay last year, and the public, taxpayers deserve to know who is responsible for this, and whoever's responsible for it, if they're still in government, they should be sacked, because it's just simply not good enough. It's an absolute. I've got to stop myself, channeling my inner Malcolm Tucker here.
Go on, do it.
It's a cluster of something else. So it's just awful. It's dreadful. It's probably one of the biggest scandals of devolution. And yet,
yeah, I mean, I covered the Holyrood project. The Holyrood building, that was dreadful. Covered the trams in Edinburgh. That was dreadful. This is way worse. This is
it is, but it's also just like, what is the why is the Scottish government unable to get these big projects right? We've got, like, for example, the dualling of the A9 and the
A96.
We've got the total absolute beep show of the hospitals, Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, the one in Edinburgh. It's not as if it's just unique to one sector, like transport or whatever. It's across the board. Like, what is going on here? And it's just, it makes us look incompetent. It's embarrassing, but also these things have such a massive detrimental impact on the everyday lives of ordinary people, and it's not, it shouldn't be too much to ask for the government to actually provide, like, basic essentials for people to go about their business. It's just appalling.
I mean, 2 ferries barely scratches the surface of what's what's required. So, I mean, if we can't get this right, then who knows?
I suspect we'll be talking about this story this time next year. Just moving on to youth violence or classroom violence. We had a splash this morning. It was based on an FOI request from the Lib Dems, which showed an increase in school violence, particularly in primary school. So I think that for the last full year, you've got about 11,000 violence reports, and there was also an increase for secondaries as well. And that ties into a campaign that the Record's got, Our Kids, Our Future, about calling for greater interventions on this issue. Dougie, what was your response to these pretty worrying statistics?
Well, obviously, as you say, Paul, it's incredibly concerning. Sadly, not overly surprising. I think the last few years have been extremely tough on our school children. I think ultimately, COVID lockdowns are responsible for this, taking them out of their school environment, placing enormous pressure on them, being schooled from home. We've all seen the videos, online, this kind of social media era. It's incredibly depressing, unfortunately, incredibly familiar, and I think it's a hangover from COVID, and how you end it or how you bring it back under control. It's very difficult. Whether time will be a healer, I don't know, but it was an extremely powerful front page and extremely depressing one as well.
Hannah, do you agree with Dougie? Do you think these statistics should be seen in the light of lockdown and the impact that that's had on children and young people?
I mean, I'm going to be completely honest and say I don't know. I'm not a child psychologist. I've got no idea if the pandemic made everybody mental in some way or the other. The ramifications of the pandemic have been so widespread, and there are things that are only coming to light now that, we would never have considered to be an after effect of the pandemic. I mean, mental health problems through the roof, relationship breakdowns, undiagnosed conditions, and then, there's all the other stuff to do with public spaces being changed and not reopened, and there's just so many things. But in terms of kids and violence, I mean, I'm not going to sit and say, oh yes, it's definitely the pandemic. I've got no idea. I really don't know. But whatever the cause, teachers need to be able to teach in classrooms where they feel safe, and they need to be able to take action if there's something going on where there is a safety issue, and kids need to be able to go into school and not be afraid that they're going to get battered and that video is going to be put on the internet. I mean,
it's social media, I think, that is one of the big issues here, because when I was at school there was violence. I used to see fights, but now with technology, with TikTok and Facebook, folk are recording this, putting it on the social media platform, and it's getting shared. It's sort of ritual humiliation.
Yeah.
Do you think is that something that really should be clamped down on, this harmful content?
Well, yeah, but I mean, yes, obviously. I mean, it shouldn't be allowed. But we've seen this with, the UK government's online safety bill and the amount of problems that they've had with that, trying to get that through, because where do you even start? And these social media companies are completely at a loss. Like, they can't police absolutely every single post that goes on. If you post something, even if that company takes it down, somebody's already copied it and put it on another platform, or there's 1,000 more versions of it popping up on everywhere else. So it's a really, really tricky issue. But I do agree with what you're saying, Paul, in terms of social media being a catalyst for this stuff. I do think that social media has a huge kind of part to play in many of the issues, especially around development of children and young people, and this might be one of the problems. And then other things like self-harm content and kind of radicalization and all that stuff. It's just really, really difficult to control.
Dougie, I was going to say, you think of the strictures that we work under as journalists. We've got the IPSO code, we've got the law, yet these things don't seem to apply to the social media companies. Is there a case for them to be treated like they were media organisations, and then they have to sort of comply with the rules that we have to comply with?
I think there is a case for that. I think they could be doing more as well. I think with the algorithms they have, if they can tell I've been talking about a certain product and then all of a sudden an advert pops up for it on my feed, then I'm sure they can take action against these videos, these messages. It's a complete minefield, a legal minefield. We've seen it during the Alex Salmond trial, social media. It seems to me only a matter of time before trials collapse because of things that are posted on social media, and it's a complete Wild West on there, and they should be policed. You shouldn't be able to go on there and make defamatory comments or comments that are in contempt of court. You certainly should be able to go on and post videos of some kid battering another kid. So I think absolutely, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, all these, Instagram, all these have a part to play, and I think they just pay lip service to this problem. They just kind of go, we're trying, we're doing what we can. It's all about free speech, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. They don't want to take responsibility. So it might be a case that government needs to come in and take responsibility for them or from them.
All right, let's wrap things up with good week, bad week. Hannah, let's start with you. Who's up, who's down?
So my bad week, let's start with the bad week, is Oliver Dowden, after he, I don't know if this was his first, was it his first?
I think it might have been. I haven't seen him at PMQs.
No, I don't. Yeah, so it was his first PMQs, and because basically all the deputies got put up, so it was him versus Mary Black, and he made a bit of a silly mistake and said that the SNP had only been in government for 13 years, when actually it's been 16 years for the SNP, while his own party is the one that's been in government for 13 years. So he got roundly mocked for that, and quite rightly so. And my good week is Keir Starmer. I think that, he's doing all right. The local elections result, couldn't have really asked for much better in that. And I think that, Labour continue, I feel like I say this every time I'm on here, but Labour continues to be, going up in the polls, and all they need to do is not do anything massively stupid. And, hopefully it'll be bye-bye Rishi this time next year.
On that, Hannah, I mean, the polls are very good for Labour, stubbornly so. Still get the impression that Starmer is kind of permanently stuck in third gear. Just can't find 4 and 5.
Yeah, no, but I don't know. I mean, we say this all the time, though. I just feel like this is the constant thing. I think
maybe he doesn't need 4th and 5th gear to beat the Tories this time.
Well, maybe not, but also let's just here, if you're listening, just stay where you are. Don't do anything stupid. Don't try and go up to 5th gear. Don't listen to Paul. You'll end up making an idiot of yourself. Just stay where you are, 3rd gear, and it'll be fine. It'll all be fine. That's my message to Keir Starmer.
Anna's message to Keir Starmer: stay in 3rd gear. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Dougie, how about you? Good week, bad week?
Well, I'll start with good week. Following on from Hannah, very similar. I've picked Anis Sarwar.
Oh my God, are we actually agreeing on something?
We are.
Wow.
It's although I would say that Keir Starmer to me is like the grey man. He's like the John Major spitting image puppet at times. He's just so beige. But anyway, I'll move on to Anis.
Is he grey or is he beige? You can't have it both ways.
He's a bit of both. He somehow manages to be both. Well, according to the SNP, he's red and blue, so I'm sure he can be grey and beige at the same time. But I think it's been a good week. I think it's been a good week for Anis Sarwar. Mary Black, I think, gave him an absolute open goal with her Labour and Tories are the same. And then just earlier on, I can't remember who it was, but she gave the game away to in an interview with alongside Ian Murray about how the SNP would bring down a Labour government. And I think, in Scotland, that is an open goal. Obviously, Express Leader, the last thing Express readers want to see is a coalition of chaos between Labour and the SNP. But I think to quite a lot of voters in Scotland who just want to get rid of the SNP, that would be music to their ears. The SNP are struggling to get a candidate for Rutherglen and Hamilton West. So, who really wants to go up there just to be beaten, and they're going to win obviously the North Lanarkshire by-election next month in the next few weeks. So it all looks rosy for Anis.
Do you think that you mentioned the coalition of chaos line? Do you think that will have as much traction this time around as it has say in 2015? I mean, do you think voters in England will really think that Starmer will be in Hums's pocket?
No, I don't. I think the difference is back then it was tight. The Tories obviously didn't have a majority going into 2015, so it was it was slightly different. I think it's a 7-year-old attack. I think it should scare people. I think the prospect of it should concern people. Why would you want a party that hates the UK to be, dictating terms to the UK government?
Won't Labour just go to the Lib Dems though if they need extra votes? They're not going to touch the SNP with a barge pole.
Exactly. I mean the word we've had is very much absolutely no deal with the SNP. This was the message last year. It tells you it appears to be still the message now. So.
It also relies on the SNP doing fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't, who knows what's going to happen?
I mean, I think you can see the SNP are completely desperate right now. They can see their vote share slipping away. They're turning their attacks. This Tory Labour, same thing. And yet, if they really believe that, it also means that Scotland pretty much always gets the government it votes for if Labour and Tories are running the same. So they're saying, they're kind of contradicting themselves. But no, I think it shows complete desperation in the SNP ranks, and I think we can expect to see this getting ramped up over the next few weeks, months, and year.
Great stuff. Thank you for that. That's it for another week. I hope you've enjoyed the latest Planet Holyrood. Thanks again to Hannah and to Dougie for their expert analysis and commentary. So I hope you join us again next week. Cheers.
It's important we look at the facts. Why?
Douglas Ross is sounding pretty scared.
I believe in independence.
And he clapped like a seal.